All right. This week we'll be talking about getting into World War II and a couple of the things that are coming up on the test. I think I want to take the last part of this video and talk about maybe a study guide or things to look out for to be prepared for the test at the end of this week. However, let's go over some of the things that I want to make sure that you see, or the themes or concepts that you're able to see in the reading this week. One, you're going to see Roosevelt's neutrality. And really what I want you to take away from this is the idea that the way that he's being pulled both ways. The American people don't want to get involved in the war. They don't think that it's our war and they don't want to be involved. However, he's being asked by Stalin and by Churchill to get involved. His way in order to get involved at the current time was to send arms, to send military vehicles, ships, things of that nature, and through American production to be able to sell that. That also helped lift the United States out of the Depression, which I think is an excellent thing that we need to highlight as you go through, is to find out that by doing this, by really working the war as a business, he was able to put a lot of people back to work. He was able to get a lot of manufacturing jobs, and then help those companies to be able to sustain money so that they can continue to build upon those things. And I think that's a really important part that you're going to want to focus on this week in this week's readings. Okay, really the neutrality, but really what is Roosevelt doing and how is he playing really both these sides? Now, I'm not really one for sensationalized history, and I think this is a point though that I want to make, because a lot of times Roosevelt is looked at as allowing the bombing of Pearl Harbor to happen. Okay, really what's happening is he's trying to get U.S. troops prepared, because he has decided that he's going to start funneling troops in through Africa and helping out, but he wants to give it a year and a half, about 18 months before he starts doing that. And so we have military bases out and around the world, and he's got military personnel at Pearl Harbor. And what I was told as a high school student was that Roosevelt knew that Pearl Harbor was going to be bombed and allowed it to be bombed because he needed to get the American people to support going to war. I don't think that that's correct. In fact, there are multiple things that suggest that he didn't know. If he did know, that would be ludicrous and potentially could get him into a lot of trouble for just allowing American soldiers to die. Okay, and so I don't believe that he did know at all. I think that the scholarship suggests that he didn't know, at least that it was going to happen imminently. Okay, that is a shock, and it does happen, and so that takes the U.S. into World War II. However, he was already planning on going to war, and he had talked with Stalin and with Churchill about a way to start in Africa and come up and start in Russia and come down, and they were going to meet. And so these are things that are going on that I want you to be aware of as you continue reading this week, and some themes that you can see that as you read, that you can find out what you believe as this comes together, because I'm sure that you've heard some of these myths as well, and they just are unsubstantiated. And so there's no way that we can prove that he knew or that he didn't know. Okay. Lastly, I want you to understand the minority experience during World War II. Okay. We have a lot of things going on. One of those is Japanese internment. Now, we have the Minidoka camp here where we interned Japanese Americans. These are Japanese who were already living here, a lot of them American citizens that we rounded up and put into a concentration camp. Okay, in some cases, it was legalized slavery. These Japanese men, mostly, would go out and could work during the day, and the farmers kept the money for themselves, because they would pick them up at the fence, take them out and work, and then bring them back at night, and that's where they stayed. And it's a form of slavery in some respects. In others, they were kept in horrible conditions near Seattle. The Hunt Camp, if you've been out there, it's not a great place either to live and to work. And we've seen a lot of these things as they've gone on. And so I hope that as you work through this week, you can see in the reading at least the Japanese experience. Okay, African American experience, that's a little bit different. You have a lot of African Americans who are immediately start moving west. You see a lot of companies like Kaiser who are ramping up or increasing shipbuilding in the Pacific Northwest, and you get a lot of African Americans who are going out there and increasing this African American base. I mean, the population almost doubles overnight in the Pacific Northwest, where we get a lot of African Americans there working. You get a lot of women working, white and minorities as well, who are working in these factories and are using really the war to be able to get ahead. However, as we see after World War II, a lot of them don't keep their jobs, and they're the first ones to go. And so I want you to be aware of that as you work through the reading this week. Lastly, and there are other minorities here, but these are the three big ones that you're going to see in the text this week. But Native Americans. Native Americans are used as code talkers, as we know. I mean, this is something that's been very well documented in the last couple of years in several movies. But they are part of the war effort in World War II. Okay. However, when they come home, they aren't accepted either. Some of them are. I should clarify. Some of them are, but it's the ones who assimilate into white European culture who continue to move on. You get very few African Americans or Native Americans who were able to continue living the life that they once did and being able to be part of society. And so a lot of them go back to the reservation as veterans who are really unsung heroes, which is unfortunate that we don't do a better job. I mean, we're starting to now, but I hope that you see that in the reading this week. Okay, those are some themes that I would take a look at coming off of spring break. I hope that it was a great week for you, and that now you can sit down and get some of this reading done, and really specifically look at some of these themes: getting neutrality, getting into World War II, and then some of the minority experiences. Okay. As for the test, I want to make sure the test is at the end of the week, and I want to make sure that you're able to look at a couple of things. One, let's make sure that you're looking at the Depression. Probably some causes for the Depression and how it impacted the economy. Maybe argue what you think is the biggest contributing factor, at least to you. Okay. Obviously, you're going to want to use material from the text or any other supplementary reading to be able to back up your argument. Okay. I'd like to know what the difference is between FDR and his idea, or his first 100 days, and how he tries to turn the Depression around, at least within the first 100 days, and what were some of the responses of his critics. Okay. I'd also like to understand neutrality during World War II, and maybe how that differs from neutrality during World War I, if it does at all. And that's up to you, and really explain that neutrality versus joining World War II. Okay. I do have maybe one that's going to be a little bit of a stump, which is really a deeper idea of becoming involved in World War II. What I would like is really more stuff from the reading, which provides significance as to why the U.S. got involved in World War II, rather than Pearl Harbor was bombed, and so the United States got involved. Okay. Lastly, and you knew this was going to happen, there's going to be a question on minority experiences during and after World War II. And so to pay close attention to that reading this week, but be able to bring all of it together to be able to show where we're going from here, what we're looking at, and then hopefully you'll be able to answer the questions this week. Again, 4 questions, 50 points apiece. Answer them to the best of your ability and as fully as possible. In the next day or so, I'm going to need an email setting up the discussion for this week. Hopefully you can do that, or for the second half of the semester, really just a student-led discussion where you can come in and talk to me email me and let's talk about some options, and we'll go from there. I hope you've had a great spring break. I hope that you're ready to get the semester over with as we work through the last several weeks. Good luck on your reading this week.